Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Grandmaster Daniel King. He's been a chess player for 45 years. You may know him as a chess commentator, a journalist, and an award-winning author of 15 books. Daniel, a real pleasure to have you.
Hi there, how are you doing?
So, give us a little background first, how you got started in the game.
Well, my parents played at home, and, I used to watch them, and I was just kind of fascinated how they sat over this board with these mysterious pieces for what seemed like hours. When you're a really young kid, it seems like an eternity. And I just wanted to know how to play when I saw them play. So, yeah, I learned the moves at 5, and I just kept going.
I got it. But then actually you fairly early on got going and began winning tournaments and awards. How difficult was it? I mean, I realize you're playing against tough players, but in terms of preparing yourself to be a top-tier chess player, what did you have to do?
Well, okay, when I was playing at a very young age, of course, there was zero preparation involved. All I wanted to do was play. Every kid, that's just what they want to do, and that's great. So I was very lucky to grow up in London, where big population, loads of players, lots of competition, and that's very important. If you want to get good at anything, you need the competition and the practice. So yeah, I just quickly got into a whole scene here. It was after 1972 really, when there was the famous Fischer-Spassky match in Reykjavik, and there was this massive chess boom all over the world. So I was really part of that. So, yeah, I just played a lot and had a lot of competition, actually.
All right. So there are certain skills that people have to be a successful chess player, and there's, frankly, a huge debate. The debate has even been on the Goldstein on Gelt show about whether people are born with the genius or it's something they can develop over time. Which side do you fall on?
I fall on the side of practice. And it's your environment and not your genes. Well, okay, I should qualify that a little bit. But yeah, I think basically if you grow up in the right environment, and I was very lucky to grow up in the right environment, where there's a lot of competition, and I think that is the most important thing. That plus your desire to succeed, and this will. Now, this is where I think the genes come in, because I think character is incredibly important. And I think that's what people miss out on when they, discuss, well, it's just your environment. I look at my kids, and I've got one who's a fighter and a battler, and I've got another who's just so laid back, and I don't know how they came out like that. And I just know he's very charming, but he's just very laid back. And I just know which one's going to succeed in life. It's the battler that's going to come out.
Are they both chess players also?
Well, they play, but they're not. They're not really into it. They have other interests. I didn't really push it. I was quite laid back in that respect. But for me personally, I've always been a battler, and I have a brother, and we used to play as kids, and it was fierce competition. But I won out. And then, there was a whole load of us playing here in London. And again, I wanted to succeed. And it's just part of my character. I was really competitive. And I think that's very, very important. But I think you need dedication and the practice. So, yeah, I basically fall on the side of your environment and your character. I think that's very, very important. And the 10,000 hours theory, I really go along with that.
No, I think that's there's a lot to be said. Interestingly, when playing with kids, 2 of my kids are chess champions here in Israel, and not because of me. It's because they had great coaches. But I often find when I play with them, there's such a difference. My daughter is very positional, so I won't even know that I'm losing until all of a sudden I realize, holy cow, I'm totally surrounded. There's nothing I can do. Whereas she's 20, and my 17-year-old son, he's the type of guy who when, I'll even be able to, I'll have a lead against him, he just looks and he thinks, and all of a sudden he just turns the game around. He's the guy you call, when everything is lost, and he comes in and saves the day. And I think there really are a lot of differences, and both of them can make you successful. Do you find that also in other chess players you've run across?
Oh, very much so. I mean, I think that's, for me, what's fascinating about the game of chess, that actually there isn't just one right way to play the game. You can play the game in so many different styles. And, you'll have a middle game position where you'll get 5 different players and they'll have 6 different opinions on what the best move is. And often they'll all be right. It's whether you carry through your plan well. But that's what I love about the game, that there are all these different styles and it very much reflects personality. And, just in the world, you get so many different personalities and, it all kind of works in the end. I mean, in some positions, there's a right move and a wrong move. Yeah, absolutely. But very often, it's about personality. I can think of, let's think of some of the top chess players in the world. You'll find, going back a few years, there's Garry Kasparov. He's now retired, but he was very, very aggressive and very straightforward in the way he played, and he was a bit like a juggernaut. And it worked fantastically well. But then you'll have other players. If I think of someone like Anatoly Karpov, the great Russian world champion just before Kasparov, he was more like a boa constrictor. He's that positional player who would restrict his opponent's possibilities and gradually surround them and squeeze the life out of his opponent. And that worked pretty well too. He was world champion for 10 years, one of the best players in the history of the game. And, it's fascinating.
There are certainly a lot of different approaches. We're talking with Daniel King, chess grandmaster. He is also a chess journalist, a chess teacher, an award-winning writer in the chess world. He's been talking to us a little bit about maybe the personalities that chess players have, but a lot of people study chess not to become a world champion, and I use myself as an example because I have not yet had the chance to compete at that level. But I do find that chess strategies and tactics can be applied to many, many situations in life. In fact, I've recently finished writing a book with Susan Polgar about how the strategy of chess can be applied to personal finance. The name of the book, we like the clever title is called Rich as a King.
Yeah.
Put your name in it. There you go.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah.
Do you find this as well? Do you sometimes find, that if more people would be able to use the strategies and or tactics from chess outside of the chess game, maybe they'd make better decisions?
Oh, definitely. It's funny, but I there are some people I encounter when they hear that I'm a chess player, they imagine that I'm going to walk in the room, and move like a knight across the room or something like that, absolutely bonkers. And they think that chess kind of completely dominates my life in every sphere. Not true. But what I would say is that I do find that I think about things in life in the way that I would think about a game of chess. And I think this is very personal, but I've always found that there are certain situations where I'm very rational. And I think this is to do with my chess background, where I can just take out the emotion from a situation completely and just think, well, okay, here are my 3 possibilities. Okay, let's look at possibility A and see the consequences of that, B and C. And, I can just be very, very objective and think very, very clearly about situations. So, I think it's very personal what people get out of chess. But for me, that's the thing. It's decision making and the clarity of decision making, which I think is very important for me.
Those words are something I've heard a number of chess greats tell me. In fact, Ken Rogoff, who is now at Harvard, former chief economist at the IMF, and also a chess grandmaster.
I know Ken very well, yeah.
So he said exactly the same. I asked him for an example, and he said he was talking about one of the meetings that they had at the IMF, and how he said he just took a break for a minute, and he thought, and then he said it was exactly like when he was playing chess competitively. And with that, Daniel, I've got to stop. My producer is giving me the signal. Thanks again for your time. We're going to put links to all of your websites at the show notes at goldsteinongelt.com. So I really appreciate your joining us today.
Not at all. Pleasure.
So I'm your host, Doug Goldstein. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with international investment expert Doug Goldstein. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, go to www.goldsteinongelt.com or write to Doug directly at doug@profile-financial.com.